Hey everybody, welcome back to CJ's Card Corner. Today I want to talk about card shows, and I want to talk specifically about my experience with my first card show in 2025. And I've got 3 card shows coming up this year that I am super excited about. And I kind of wanted to walk through my experience and link down below some of the things that I use for my card show and the excitement that not only is my own, but the excitement that happens at the card show, and then some of my challenges that I experienced due to the card show experience, what it looks like from a vendor perspective, and kind of where I think that the world of collectibles, both Pokemon and sports cards, is going when it comes to card shows. So let's start specifically with the card show that I did here in my local region. I did a card show last year, and it was kind of my first foray into card shows. I had been to a lot of card shows, like by walking in myself as a collector, a buyer, all those things, but I had never done a vendor show before. And so last August I did a vendor show. I did another one here in January, a couple months ago, and it was some of the most fun I've ever had. I met so many cool people. I got to talk about all parts of the hobby. One of my buddies is doing a YouTube experience as well for Pokemon, was there, and we kind of shared in the experience together. We had tables side by side. It was just an awesome experience. And the vendor POVs that you see online that is so popular does not do it justice. It is such a unique experience, and it is so fun. And there are challenges. Let's talk a little bit about how I got started. In my region, there are a couple different card shows that are kind of in my locale, in my city. They're at different locations across town, and they're different in sizes, and they grow depending on the number of people that attend and the number of vendors and all those things. A couple of them are free to come in. A couple of them charge a couple dollars, and then there's bigger ones that charge a significantly larger amount of money and give you the whole bracelet and do the whole thing, right? My experience in town at the smaller card shows was relatively poor. There weren't enough vendors to get excited about purchasing. I did find some cards to buy at a couple of them, but I didn't feel like the vendors were such that they had a lot of room to work on their cards, and there wasn't a lot of like communication. If they had the price, that was their price. They weren't willing to really compromise or work with me on price. So I decided that the smaller card shows weren't really for me. I then found one of the larger card shows in the region and decided to vend. I reached out to the person that runs the card show and met them and talked to them a little bit, and then signed up. And then I reached out to one of my buddies who also wanted to try a card show experience, and he's got a video that he did talking about his card show experience, which was very different than mine. We sat down and we talked about it, and we ended up paying the vendor fee, which at the time was $100 per table. It was an 8-foot table, and we decided we were going to do it. And we signed up, we picked our table, we went through the whole thing, we got our confirmation email, and then it was, let's decide how best to do this. Well, since I had never vended before, I started watching videos online about what to do and kind of what to look for and how to set up and what I needed. And I found some really awesome YouTubers that talk about their experience and their product that they used and the things that they bought and their do's and don'ts, and it was extremely helpful. But I had to find my own way, and my way was absolutely different than everybody else. I decided to buy some display cases to display my cards, and I decided whether I wanted to do Pokemon and sports cards, or if I wanted to do one or the other. I decided whether I wanted to do sealed product for Pokemon, or if I wanted to keep holding and investing in those. There were so many decisions to make. And I ultimately decided that I wanted to focus on sports cards because that was really where I was excited and driven, and I knew that I could talk to people about those. Whereas Pokemon, since I'm more into sealed, you kind of run into the fear of everybody looking at you saying, you're a scalper, you bought all these and you bought them and took them from kids. And I've talked about that before. That's exactly kind of what I saw happening all over the card show, is that a lot of people were like, this is $50, you're selling it for $100, you're a scalper. I didn't want that experience, so I decided to focus on sports cards. And since I don't sell sealed sports cards, that wasn't an issue. And in my area, sealed is relatively prevalent and easy to find. I decided to start talking about sports cards, and I brought all my cards. I bought my cases, and I've linked down what I purchased below. Went to the card show that morning, and I set up, and it was a blast. From the moment the card show opened and I got to talk to other vendors. I got to talk about baseball and football. And it was just such a unique experience to be able to walk through the vendor show and see what everybody else did and how they set up their tables. I got to find out what it was like to talk about cards and discuss pricing and look up pricing, and some of these people were using comp apps I'd never heard of before, and I got to learn about those. I got to work with other vendors on pricing and sales, and I sold some of my biggest cards that I've ever sold, cards that I couldn't sell on my eBay store that I was able to discount and sell locally. And the time of year that you vend absolutely matters. So let's break down some of the problems that I had. A lot of times there were people that came up to my table where we just couldn't agree a price or a comp or something like that. There's a lot of anger in the hobby sometimes where some people just don't want to pay your price and they're angry at your price because they think it's worth less, but you know that it's worth what you think it's worth and you want to keep it. So you just have to learn how to be kind and say, hey, I understand that we're off on this price. I would recommend that maybe you go try to find this card somewhere else because I'm not willing to get where you want me to be on price because I believe the card is worth more and I'm going to hang on to it till I can sell it at that higher price, or I'm going to keep it as a part of my investment or my collection. That's something that I wasn't really ready for. I wasn't prepared for. And I recommend making sure that you stick to your guns on what your value of your cards is and you know what your value is, because not everybody thinks the same way you do. And you want to make sure you understand where that price point is that you're willing to sell, and don't take less than you're willing. Don't push yourself when you're not willing to take less. Don't feel like you're going to be pressured into it. The same thing goes for buying. This was something that I was terrified of. I love to buy cards. I brought $1,000. I was so excited to buy cards and add to my investment, add to my collection. There are so many people that walk up to your table and want to sell their cards. They ask you, do you buy? My answer was always yes. I was not very good at it. I didn't comp prices very well on cards that I was buying. I made some massive mistakes, and some of those cards I still have and I didn't sell. Other cards, one of the craziest things is when you buy cards and then resell them at the show for more than you paid. That is super fun, and obviously not so much fun for the buyers necessarily, but that's something that I did a lot of at my second show. But the first show, I didn't do a very good job. I would buy a lot of cards, like 5 or 6 cards, and then I would put them in a box and I didn't price them or put them out. That was a huge mistake. One of the best things you can do is buy cards at the show for 60, 70%, or 80, depending on where you want to be for comp pricing, and then put that card back into your case to see if someone else will buy it at full market or near market price, because you obviously can sell at 10% less. And that's something that's absolutely massive. And I did a ton of that at my second show, and it was really successful. And I highly recommend doing that. But at my first show, it was super challenging. I paid way over comps for a lot of the cards that I bought. I paid for cards that I probably shouldn't have bought that weren't very liquid and that I still have today. So be extra careful with what you're buying at a card show, because if you're buying a card, there's a good chance that that person tried to sell it to another vendor. And if you buy it, it's possible that that vendor already knew something that you didn't, and that it's not very liquid and it's not able to sell. Especially if your table's nowhere near the front door and you're way in the back, there's a chance that they've already talked to 15 other vendors that didn't want to buy that card. Be extra careful with what you buy and do your research. Take your time. If they're wanting to sell their card at your table and they're not willing to give you time to research comps, then you don't want to buy from them anyway. I recommend taking your time, get a piece of paper, bring a notebook, and write down the prices of the cards that they're willing to sell to you and tell them what you're willing to pay, and be extra careful with checking those comp prices on everything that you buy, and check last solds always, always, always. Not currently listed, but last solds, because you never know. The other thing that was really, really hard to deal with, I didn't have enough football for this kind of a show. I had a show in August, which is really at the real heart of start of the football season, and when everybody's really excited about the previous year's rookie class. I did not understand that. I brought boxes and boxes of baseball cards because I thought it's baseball season. We're getting near the playoffs. everybody's going to want to buy all of these cards. That's just not true. I made a huge mistake. And I thought baseball was going to be popular, and maybe some of that's my region, but you have to know your region, you have to know where your card show is located, and the time of year that it is. Because if you bring baseball cards to a football card show, you're not going to sell hardly anything, and you're going to be out all that time and effort that you made. And I recommend making sure you understand your card show before you vend. Maybe go to that card show once or speak to people that have vended at it before you vend at the card show, so that you're comfortable and you know what to expect. In my case, I should have known that football was going to be popular. I ended up buying a lot, but I didn't sell a lot because I just didn't bring much. So you have to be aware of what you're doing at that card show before you do it, especially since you're going to be pricing your cards, which let's talk about that now. Prepping for the card show was probably the most grueling thing I've ever done in this hobby. Having to price all of your cards, comp all of your cards, and not just go off of your inventory that's listed on eBay or other sites because it might be behind the times is really, really hard work. This was one of the most challenging things I've had to do in this hobby. Having to go through and comp every single card, sticker every single card, price every single card, took me weeks. By the time I got them all priced, I was exhausted because I was shipping cards, I was listing cards, I was pricing cards. I would spend hours and hours and hours doing all of that. What I've done differently now at my second show is I curate the cards that I want to bring and I price them well in advance. I can always change the price at the card show while I'm there, or if people are not interested. Also, I made the mistake of putting the price on the back of the card, which does not work for me. I tried that at my first two card shows. It went very poorly. Everybody wanted to see the backs of the cards, and it was a lot more work for me. A lot of people didn't ask because they thought the card maybe wasn't available or wasn't for sale. And I found that when I priced them on the front, a lot more people wanted to see them or touch them or try to purchase them because they could see the price and they knew what to expect from pricing. That was something that kind of changed the game at my second card show. But one of my biggest challenges was prepping for the card show. Having to box everything up, take some of my eBay inventory, some of the stuff I didn't have listed on eBay, and finding a way to keep it separate and keep it tracked, that was really, really hard. And I think prepping in advance is so important, making sure that you spend the time to price your cards and understand that this is a super time-consuming process, and you need to be aware of how much time it takes to do those things before you start to vend. It is a ton of work, and be prepared to put in a lot of time to get ready for a card show because it's a lot. Unless you're vending full time and your cards are always priced, be aware it takes time, it takes effort, and it is a lot of work. Let's talk about some of the positives. These are really self-explanatory. I sold a ton of cards. I bought a ton of cards. I bought a ton of cards and then sold a bunch of those cards I bought. There was so much money changing hands at these card shows that you can't believe it sometimes. And my experience at the card show was such that I had cards that I didn't know I could sell that sold at the card show. I had cards I bought at the card show that I never thought I'd be able to get my hands on. I bought cards that were super expensive that I got at a really great price because people just wanted cash for the card show and they wanted to sell their cards. I thought that was so unique and fun, and my experience was so fun. I bought and sold cards like crazy. It was more money that was changing hands in one day than I've ever had in this hobby, and I recommend trying it at least once so you experience money flowing and moving in a way that you maybe didn't think was possible. And for me, it was so fun to see cards that I'd had for a long time sell, and I could maneuver my pricing to work for the buyers, and because it was cash that was moving instead of it being a shipping thing, and it was just a hand over the card and here's a handshake and we're done with the deal, right? And that was so unique and fun, and I had cards that moved so fast. Like, I sold a bunch of one of ones that I had for a long time. I then saw those one of ones exchange hands at other card shows in the area. I've seen these cards move to 5 different vendors over the course of the last year. And it is so fun to see the community move these cards and see them change hands and see all of these things happen so fast. It is just a blast. One more negative that I wanted to discuss is the trade-up challenge. I know that there's a lot of negativity and there's a lot of positivity about the trade-up challenge out there, and it's a sensitive subject, but I do want to address it. The trade-up challenge is a very complicated piece to the vending puzzle. You are constantly having kids or even adults come up to your table and want to do the trade-up challenge, where they want to take a card they have and have you give them a more expensive card to get that card. There are times when it does work for you as a vendor because you probably paid less for that card and you can do the trade-up challenge. But you have to be careful. Once you do a trade-up challenge, they're going to keep coming back to you. Because I know when I started, I ended up giving a bunch of cards that were more expensive than the one I was getting in return because I was excited to be doing this thing. And it was scary. I didn't want to say no. I didn't want to be the bad guy. It felt very uncomfortable. I would say make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into when you accept the trade-up challenge. Make sure you know where your value is and if you can afford to do something like this, because it is a big deal. Once you do it once, they're going to keep coming back to you and you have to be wary of that. You also have to be wary of vendors doing it. I had a vendor that was right across from my table that had their son doing the trade-up challenge with all of the vendors in the building. And then he would come back with the card and put it for sale at their vending table. That is a big no-no for me. That is very, very bad. I watched him do it with my card. I watched him come and take a card off my table that I was in Goodwill trading to him, and then he went and walked it over to his vendor table and sold it at his vendor table for my asking price. But I ended up losing $3 or $4 on the transaction. Now, that's my fault. I made the choice to do that, and I don't blame him for taking advantage of my goodwill. But you have to be aware of that dark side of the trade-up challenge and be extra careful where you're throwing your cards, because you don't want to be giving out things that you can't afford to give out, that you don't want to be sold somewhere else, when maybe you'll be able to sell it at your table, and understand what you're getting yourself into, because it is kind of a big thing and it's happening all over the country at all of these vendor shows. So be extra careful and understand what you're getting yourself into. At some point, I'll probably do a longer form video on the trade-up challenge. I'm going to do my next card show here coming up in June, and I will probably see what the experience is like then at my third or fourth card show and talk a little bit more about it then. And I'm hoping to do a vendor POV at that show, so we'll talk more about that then. Positivity at the card show was huge. I got to talk about so much fun baseball, so much fun football. I met so many cool people that collected some crazy cards, some crazy collections. I met a guy that has every EV ever made. I met a guy that collects Ken Griffey Jr. autographs and had the most insane Griffey collection of autographs I have ever seen. I saw some major investments in vintage baseball. I saw a couple Babe Ruth that I never thought I'd see in person. The experience was absolutely incredible, and being able to experience that in a place where everyone's there for the same reason. Everybody's there to experience the hobby in the way that makes them happy and that excites them. Some of them there to make money for their livelihood. Some of them there to collect cards that add to their fun and that add to their collection or their investments. It is such a fun place to be. I am so excited for the next one, and I'm going to do more videos on all of this, on vending, on my experience, because it's something that I'm really passionate about and something that I super enjoyed, and I cannot wait to do it again. Tell me how your vending experience has been, or how your experience has been at card shows. I'd love to hear how you have experienced them, what it looks like for you. Are you going to go to a card show? Are you going to vend at a card show? What does that look like for you? How much fun have you had, or what were some of the challenges you faced? And I'm going to talk more about this in the future because I don't want this one to go too much longer. But I'm going to talk more about it later, and I look forward to that. So look for those. And I really appreciate if you stuck around with me. If you like this content, please let me know. Please comment, like, and subscribe. The more comments and likes and subscriptions I get, the more I know that these videos are liked and popular. So I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.